Hello there, my sleep fellows. Let your eyes grow heavy and your breath fall into a gentle rhythm, because tonight we'll travel together to a place you know well, even if you've never truly been there. A place where floating candles light the corridors, portraits whisper secrets when no one's listening, and a warm hearth crackles behind ancient stone walls. Tonight, we return to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, not in the middle of a grand adventure, nor during a dangerous duel, but in a quieter time, a gentler time. The kind of night when the castle is calm and drowsy, and the secrets it chooses to share are soft ones, meant only for those willing to listen closely. This story begins not in the Great Hall, where feasts are held and owls swoop from the rafters, but in a quieter corner of the castle. Far beyond the classrooms and common rooms, there lies a tucked-away hallway. Not hidden, really, just often forgotten. The kind of place one might pass by without thinking. Its windows are narrow and dusts smeared. Looking out over a quiet garden, its air is filled with the scent of old parchment and warm stone. And at the very end of this hallway, where the torchlight grows dim and the silence grows deeper, there is a room, round, quiet, and empty, except for a single stone pedestal in the center, and upon that pedestal rests a curious object, a stone, smooth, dark gray, perfectly round, ordinary, one might think, but no one remembers who placed it there. No one recalls why, and once every few years, if someone happens to enter that room at just the right time, in just the right frame of mind, and gently touches the stone, it sings, not loudly, not in any voice you might recognize, but in a way that curls around your thoughts like a lullaby, soft and shimmering, like moonlight on rippling water. Tonight, our story is about that stone, about the quiet, curious student who found it, about a melody no one else could hear, and about what it means to listen, not just with your ears, but with your heart. So if you enjoy gentle journeys like this, where magic whispers instead of roars, where mystery is wrapped in warmth, and where stories unfold like soft blankets on a cold night, don't forget to follow along and perhaps drift gently into more magical tales each evening. Now, pull your blanket up a little higher, rest your head against the pillow, and let the soft lantern light of Hogwarts guide your thoughts. The corridors are quiet now. The paintings have all nodded off. The ghosts are floating peacefully through the dungeons. And somewhere, far away, a single enchanted stone is waiting to be touched. Let the story begin. Her name was Luna Lovegood, and if anyone at Hogwarts was destined to notice something quiet, strange, and easily overlooked, it was her. But this was during a gentler year, one in which the castle felt lighter, the air felt clearer, and Luna wandered the corridors not with urgency, but with her usual dreamy ease. She moved like a soft breeze through the halls, never hurrying, never getting in anyone's way, always listening to the world in a way others rarely did. Her butter blonde hair fell loosely over her shoulders, swaying gently as she walked, and her eyes were clear and silver blue, always reflecting a world beyond the one everyone else saw. Tonight, she wasn't on her way to class or rushing toward a Quidditch match. She was simply wandering, humming softly under her breath, a melody she didn't fully remember learning. She often found that Hogwarts had its own music, subtle and tender, tucked between the stones and torches. Sometimes she heard it near the library, sometimes beside the lake, sometimes on the moving staircases. But this time, the music felt like her own, or perhaps like it was calling for her. A few steps behind her walked Neville Longbottom, holding his herbology textbook to his chest, more out of comfort than necessity. He had planned to head straight back to the Gryffindor common room, but when he spotted Luna drifting down a corridor he didn't usually take, something in him felt curious too. Neville had grown braver in recent months, but he still found peace in Luna's company. There was something steadying about her presence, something that made him feel he didn't need to pretend. So he followed, not wanting to disturb her, but not wanting to turn back either. "Luna?" he finally whispered, careful not to break the quiet. She turned slowly, as though she had been expecting him all along. "Hello, Neville," she said, her voice warm and airy. "Did you hear it too?" "Hear what?" He blinked, though he wasn't surprised. Luna often heard things no one else did. "The hum in the air," she said simply, "like a song waiting to be found." Neville listened, really listened, and to his surprise the corridor did feel different, softer somehow, as if it held its breath. He stepped beside her, lowering his voice. "Maybe, or maybe I just feel calm." "That's part of it," she said with a small smile. "Calmness is a kind of music." They walked together, their footsteps almost silent on the smooth stone floor. Their path took them deeper into an old wing of the castle, one the other students rarely used. The torches here flickered more gently, and the shadows weren't frightening. They were comforting, like soft blankets wrapped around ancient secrets. Just as they turned a final corner, they nearly ran into someone else, Professor Flitwick, tiny and cheerful even at this late hour. He looked up at them from a stack of floating parchment he was organizing. "Oh, Luna, Neville, out. Exploring, are we?" he chirped softly. "Just wandering," Luna replied. Flitwick gave her a knowing smile. "The castle always seems fond of your wandering." Neville felt his cheeks warm. "We're not in trouble, are we?" "Oh heavens, no," Flitwick said kindly. "Some discoveries at Hogwarts only happen to those who walk without looking for anything." He winked. "And that's often you two." He floated past, humming in a way that somehow matched the corridor itself. Luna and Neville exchanged a glance. The night felt full of possibility now, gentle, magical possibility. Together, they continued toward the room at the end of the hall, toward the pedestal, toward the stone, waiting quietly in the dark, tucked away behind an arched alcove near the base of the North Tower, past the well-known astronomy classrooms, and beside a neglected spiral stairwell rarely used since the 18th century, there lies a corridor so quiet, so forgotten, that even Filch's dustpan rarely scrapes its floors. It was here that Luna Lovegood, wandering as she often did between lessons, brushing her fingers across old tapestries and softly humming lullabies only she remembered, found something that didn't quite belong. Or perhaps belonged far more than anyone had realized. She had been searching for a misplaced quill, a gift from her mother with a lilac feather that never shed. It had slipped from her bag during astronomy, and she'd retraced her steps, whispering softly to herself and following the vague memory of where she might have dropped it. Then she saw it, a slight shimmer in the stone wall, not a sparkle, not a gleam, but a sort of warmth, a gentle, barely visible pulse beneath the surface of one ancient, round stone embedded among hundreds of others in the long, curved wall. She paused. The rest of the corridor was silent. Not the tense silence of waiting, nor the dreadful silence of something hidden, but a soft, almost sleepy kind of quiet. The kind that falls just after midnight when the fire in the common room has gone out and the last book has been set aside. Luna reached forward slowly and laid her fingers upon the stone. It was warm, and then it sang. Just a single note, gentle, clear, as if someone had plucked a string in the air and it vibrated softly in her bones. It wasn't frightening, not at all. It felt like a memory, like the feeling you get when someone you love hums a tune from your childhood without realizing it. Luna blinked. A breeze, soft and curious, stirred the edges of her robes even though the corridor was windowless. She touched it again. Another note, slightly higher than the last. Different, yet connected, like part of a melody trying to remember itself. And as she let her fingers trace the edge of the stone, more tones followed, quiet as breath, forming a delicate pattern, not loud enough to be called a song, but far too lovely to be mere sound. She smiled. Later that day, Luna told Ginny Weasley and Neville Longbottom, not in the middle of a meal or a bustling hallway, but in the late evening hours, when the castle itself had quieted down and the moonlight lay gently across the common room floor. "I think I found a singing stone," she said softly, as if the words might drift away if she spoke too loudly. Ginny raised an eyebrow. "You mean a musical instrument?" "No," Luna replied, her expression serene. "It's part of the wall. It only sings when you touch it, very softly. I think it's lonely." Neville blinked. "Stones can be lonely. I think this one might be," Luna said, sipping from a mug of warm cinnamon tea. "Or maybe it's not lonely. Maybe it's just waiting." For what? She didn't say. But Neville and Ginny exchanged a look, one part curiosity, one part the quiet understanding that with Luna, the line between strange and wonderful was often the same. The next night, they followed her. Torches flickered dimly as the trio descended the old staircase. The corridor greeted them with stillness, the kind that made every footstep feel too loud. Luna led them to the stone, the same round one nestled among many. "Go on," she whispered. Neville reached out first. At his touch, a note rang out, soft, low, and warm, like the first cello stroke in a lullaby. He pulled his hand back instinctively. Ginny frowned. "That wasn't from you?" He shook his head. Luna smiled, stepping forward and brushing her palm along the surface again. Another note, then another, each touch releasing a new sound, connected in some invisible harmony. No words, no voice, just music, faint, delicate, kind. "It changes," Luna murmured, "depending on who touches it. I think it's listening." Neville crouched near it, inspecting the stone. It's not a charm. I don't think it's cursed either, just ancient. Ginny placed her fingertips upon it, and for her, it responded with notes like a harp's. Light and golden, she laughed softly, the sound blending with the melody. I wonder what it's trying to say, she whispered. They returned often. Sometimes it sang, sometimes it didn't. Some nights it responded to Luna alone. Other times, it would wait until all three were there, and then hum a sequence of tones none of them recognized, but all of them felt. It never played the same noose twice, but the more they visited, the more it seemed to remember, as if the stone was slowly building a tune, a memory in melody. One evening, after a particularly chilly October rain, Neville brought parchment and began recording the notes. Each time they touched it, he'd mark the sound on a staff, using soft graphite and quiet concentration. The pattern was strange, no obvious rhythm or scale, and yet it wasn't random. There was intention in its gentleness. It's like it's composing something, he said to Ginny as she leaned over his shoulder. Luna nodded from the floor, where she sat cross-legged with her chin resting on her knees, or remembering something. Their visits became a ritual, a moment of stillness amid the rush of classes and lessons and chatter. Here, in the tucked-away corridor with the singing stone, the world felt paused, slower, kinder. It wasn't long before Professor Flitwick noticed Neville sketching unfamiliar music in Charms class. "Where did you hear this?" the tiny professor asked, peering through his spectacles with gentle curiosity. Neville hesitated, then said softly, "From a stone in the North Tower corridor." Professor Flitwick's eyes widened and his voice dropped to a whisper. "The Lullaby Stone. You've heard of it?" Neville asked, startled. Flitwick smiled. "Only in passing, a forgotten mention in an old book of castle enchantments. It was said that once a group of students enchanted a stone with music so sweet it would only sing when touched by those with gentle hearts. Is it a charm? No, older than charms, older than most magic we study. It's emotional magic. Hogwarts has a way of holding on to feelings. If a place meant something, it remembers." The words echoed in Luna's heart. That night, when she touched the stone again, she whispered, "We're listening." And for the first time, the stone played 6 notes in a row, clear, connected, a fragment of a lullaby. And somewhere in that narrow corridor filled with echoes, a gentle warmth lingered long after they had gone, like a thank you. A quiet promise that the song wasn't done. Each day after their lessons, Luna, Neville, and Ginny returned to the corridor. It was never crowded there. In fact, no one else ever passed by. It was as if the hallway, like the stone itself, had quietly stepped out of time, waiting for hearts soft enough to listen. But what none of them yet realized was that the song was not only music, it was a message, a memory, and they were only just beginning to uncover what it had been waiting centuries to share. One afternoon, while the golden leaves of late autumn danced outside the enchanted windows of Hogwarts, Luna arrived early, ahead of the others. Her bag bounced gently at her side, and she hummed the 6-note fragment the stone had last sung to her, over and over, soft as breath. She knelt in front of the stone and whispered, "Hello again." And this time, before she even touched it, the stone answered. A faint vibration rippled through the air, almost imperceptible, like the hush before a storm or the distant strum of a harp string. Luna's breath caught. She placed her palm gently against the surface, and the stone began to glow, not brightly, not with brilliance or heat, but with a soft, silvery luminescence, like moonlight reflecting off still water. It shimmered in rippling pulses, matching the rhythm of the lullaby it had once whispered. And then, the wall behind it began to shift. Luna stepped back in awe as the ancient stones around the glowing one melted into motion. They rearranged themselves, soundlessly and gracefully, until what had once been solid became an arched doorway, narrow and elegant, hidden for what must have been hundreds of years. Beyond it, darkness, not the cold kind. This was a sleep-like dark, soft. Waiting, Joa could hear it. Not words, not voices, just music, faint and coaxing, curling around the edge of thought, like a forgotten dream returning. Luna hesitated only a moment before stepping inside. The passage was narrow but dry. Cobwebs brushed her arms, and she moved slowly, letting the glow from the singing stone behind her light the path just enough to see. At the end of the passage, she emerged into a room, small, round, and impossibly peaceful. The chamber was carved entirely from the same kind of stone as the one in the wall, but here they were polished smooth. No torches lined the walls, no furniture. Only one thing stood at the center, a large, low pedestal shaped like a bowl, and resting inside it, a single glowing crystal, gently humming. It was not a song in the ordinary sense, but it resonated with the soul. The same 6-note lullaby, softly repeating, shifting subtly with each pulse. Luna knelt beside it. She did not touch the crystal, not yet. She only listened, and as she did, something extraordinary happened. Images began to form, not on the walls, not in her eyes, but in her heart. A vision, a memory. Long ago, she saw a group of students, perhaps from another time, another century. 5 of them, one with golden hair, another with dark skin and robes of deep burgundy, one with laughter in her eyes, a tall boy with nervous hands, a quiet girl with a flute. They sat in this room, this very one, playing music, together. Each note they offered wasn't simply for sound. It was their emotion, joy, longing, fear, hope, given form through melody. They were practicing something older than any charm or enchantment, a forgotten form of magic, musical memory. They called it the memory song. They sang and stored their feelings into the stone, weaving them together into a living lullaby meant to soothe, to comfort, to last beyond their time at Hogwarts. They wanted future students, lost ones, lonely ones, to find the music and feel less alone. But something had gone wrong. As Luna watched, she saw them hiding the room. One by one, they placed their hands on the pedestal, each note they'd added sealing the memory deeper into the crystal. The last girl, the one with the flute, hesitated. She placed a soft kiss on the edge of the bowl, then vanished into the shadows of history, and the room went silent. Luna gasped, tears welling in her eyes. The crystal pulsed once more, then dimmed slightly, as if the vision had taken strength to show. She stood slowly, the lullaby still echoing faintly in her ears, and returned to the corridor, the doorway closing behind her. Later that evening, Ginny and Neville found her already sitting by the stone, hugging her knees, her eyes distant. "There's a room," she said softly, "and a memory, a song made of hearts." She told them everything, and that night, for the first time, all three placed their hands on the singing stone together. The melody bloomed, no longer just notes. It became harmony, full and layered, like a choir of voices long silent, returning to sing once more. The wall shimmered again, and the doorway opened once more. This time, they entered together. Inside the chamber, the crystal welcomed them with a glow of deeper blue. Neville, ever the one with steady hands and a gardener's patience, stepped forward and lightly touched the crystal. The lullaby shifted. A new note was added, hesitant, uncertain, but kind. Then Ginny followed. Her note added a spark of courage, something fierce yet gentle. And Luna, last, added wonder. Together, the melody spun into new life. The room responded. The walls began to softly hum, matching the crystal's song, and the air filled with a feeling that was almost physical: safety, nostalgia, the warmth of childhood stories. But then something else stirred, a whisper, not a voice, not quite, but a ripple through the song itself, an echo from the very heart of the memory, a plea. Unfinished, they listened closely. The lullaby stopped, and then, in the quiet that followed, the pedestal opened, like petals unfolding. Inside it, a parchment, yellowed with age, written in delicate handwriting. "If you found this song, then we are remembered. Please finish what we could not. Let the melody live again." Below the note, a single line of musical notation. It was the beginning of a new verse. Neville clutched the parchment tightly. They wanted the song to continue, to be played again. "But how?" Ginny asked. "We're not musicians." Luna tilted her head. "But we are listeners, and Hogwarts listens back." The crystal pulsed in agreement. From that day forward, they began to visit not just the corridor, but the secret chamber. Each visit, they brought something: a melody Neville remembered from his gran, a lullaby Ginny once heard her mum hum, a tune Luna dreamed of while sleeping near the Whomping Willow. They began to hum these into the crystal, softly, sincerely. And in return, the room shared more memories, fragments of the original group, echoes of forgotten laughter, tears shed in silence, the joy of shared moments no longer spoken of in the waking world. The memory song grew, and the stone in the corridor, the one that had sung when first touched, began to sing more freely, its notes drifting into the air even when no one was near. Students passing by, though few they were, began to pause, wondering at the odd, gentle music wafting through the North Tower. Professor Flitwick, with quiet eyes, simply smiled when asked. And somewhere within the walls of Hogwarts, the magic of memory, of kindness, and of melody stitched itself book into being, one note at a time. Not through wands, not through incantations, but through the power of remembering and the courage to listen. The days began to pass like soft turning pages of a forgotten book. Each morning, the sun lit the windows of Hogwarts with golden clarity, and each evening it dipped into an amber hush, casting long, sleepy shadows over the castle grounds. Yet within the North Tower, beyond that small, forgotten corridor, something was growing, quietly, gently, like ivy wrapping around stone. The memory song had become a part of them. Luna, Neville, and Ginny now visited the hidden chamber regularly. There was no schedule, no obligation, but the pull was undeniable. The crystal's soft hum had worked its way into their hearts like a rhythm remembered from childhood dreams. It felt like the room called them, not with words, but with emotions, subtle invitations wrapped in longing. Each time they entered, the crystal seemed brighter, the song a little fuller, but with its fullness came something new. Beneath the lullaby's comfort, there were fragments of discord, tiny notes that didn't belong. They would flicker through the melody like brief shadows over water, not threatening, but unsettling. A sliver of melancholy, a missing beat, a sudden silence that shouldn't be there. Neville noticed it first. During one evening visit, after he'd softly hummed a nursery tune his gran used to sing, the room answered not with light, but with cold. The crystal dimmed, not much, just a faint fading. The melody stuttered, skipping half a note. Luna looked up, her wide eyes blinking in the twilight glow. "Did you feel that?" Neville asked, voice barely louder than breath. "I did," Ginny whispered. "It was like something pulled back." Luna pressed her hand gently to the pedestal. I think the memory is trying to protect something." Neville frowned. Protect from what? The room gave no answer, but the next day, something changed. It began with the portraits. They had always passed a sleepy-eyed wizard with a long green beard on their way to the corridor. He usually snored gently, head slumped against the side of his painted frame. But that morning, as Luna passed alone, his eyes were open. He watched her, not rudely, not fearfully, but with a quiet recognition. "You're one of them," he murmured. "You've heard the stone, haven't you?" Luna paused. "Yes," he nodded slowly, as if confirming an old suspicion. "It always finds the kind-hearted ones, and then they always go too far." Before she could ask what he meant, his eyes fluttered closed again, and he began to snore. That evening, she told Neville and Ginny. The three of them stood by the corridor, uncertainty drifting between them like autumn mist. "I think we're about to learn something the castle didn't mean for us to find," Luna said softly. They stepped into the hidden room together, fingers gently brushing the singing stone, and this time the crystal showed them more. It was a memory, a vision again, but it didn't begin in the round chamber. It began in the great hall. The enchanted ceiling shimmered with twilight, and rows of long tables stretched out, filled with students from a century long past. At the staff table, the headmaster stood with his goblet raised, laughter ringing across the hall. But the music in the background, it was the song, played faintly from a harp no one could see, the same six-note melody drifting through the room like smoke. Only a few students noticed, among them, the 5 from the memory Luna had seen before. They looked at one another, confused. And then something strange happened. The enchanted ceiling darkened, not into storm, not into lightning or rain. It simply turned black. The stars vanished, not a flicker, not a glimmer, just a perfect darkness, swallowing the sky above the great hall. The laughter fell silent. Students murmured. The headmaster lowered his goblet, and then the music stopped. Everything froze for a heartbeat. And then the vision faded. The chamber returned, quiet and glowing, but the crystal was pulsing with unease. "What did that mean?" Ginny asked, shaken. "I think," Luna said gently, "the memory song wasn't just a comfort. It may have triggered something, or perhaps warned of it." Neville exhaled slowly. "The enchanted ceiling has always shown the sky above, unless something interferes. What if the song altered it? What if," Ginny added, "someone used the music for something else?" They stood in silence, unsure whether to continue, but the parchment they'd found days before, with the plea to finish the song, now carried heavier weight. Was it a request or a warning? The next morning brought another twist. As Luna passed the corridor, she found something new. On the stone floor beside the singing rock, laid carefully as if placed by invisible hands, was a broken flute. It was old, the silver was tarnished, the mouthpiece chipped, but the shape unmistakable. Ginny gasped when she saw it. "That's from the vision," she whispered. "The girl with the flute. It's hers." Neville turned it over carefully. "How did it get here? It wasn't there yesterday." Luna's gaze turned distant. "Hogwarts remembers, and sometimes it brings things back." "But why now?" Ginny asked. The stone answered. A new verses, one they hadn't heard before, began to hum from within it. This time, it was different. Minor key, slow, beautiful, but mournful. Luna, her heart trembling, whispered, "It's unfinished." The moment was broken by hurried footsteps. A voice called behind them. It was Professor McGonagall. She paused as she saw them, huddled by the stone. "I suspected it might be you three," she said softly, a shadow of something unreadable passing across her eyes. "You know about it?" Neville asked. She nodded slowly. "I knew of the stone, not of the room. I suspected, but I was never invited." Ginny frowned. "Invited?" McGonagall stepped closer, her voice low. "Hogwarts has many secrets, Miss Weasley, and many songs, but not all of them are meant to be finished." Luna stepped forward. "But this one wants to be. I feel it." McGonagall looked at her for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, she smiled softly. "Then be gentle. Songs are memories, Miss Lovegood, and memories can be fragile." With that, she turned and walked away. No detention, no lecture, just a warning and a blessing. That night, they returned to the room with the flute. Neville cleaned it gently. Ginny lit a soft magical flame to warm the chamber. Luna stood before the crystal and for the first time began to hum the unfinished melody they had just heard. One by one, they joined in. Neville's deeper tones, steady and grounded, Ginny's voice, brave and quiet, and Luna, airy and light, yet anchored in purpose. The crystal responded. A beam of soft, sky-blue light lifted from its center and rose into the air, not fast, not loud, but gracefully, like a ribbon unraveling toward the ceiling. It formed shapes: the girl with the flute, the 5 students, the darkened ceiling, all flickering like memories made of light. And finally, a 6th figure, one none of them had seen before, cloaked, faceless, standing behind the students, whispering into the melody, twisting it, altering it, and then vanishing. The crystal dimmed again. The room fell silent. The lullaby had more to tell, but it was not ready yet. The gentle suspense hung in the air, a melody half played, a memory half revealed, and Hogwarts, in its ever-watchful quiet, seemed to hold its breath. Sleepy hours drifted like snowflakes through the halls of Hogwarts, soft and silent. The stone that sang had become more than just a secret. It was now a story the 3 friends were living, a lullaby guiding them through wonder, mystery, and something else that neither books nor teachers could explain. But stories, even gentle ones, ask for choices. And so the time for simply listening had passed. Now came the moment to explore, to uncover, and to decide how far one should follow the echoes of a forgotten song. Luna, Neville, and Ginny sat one quiet evening in the corner of the library, half shadowed by dusty shelves and warmed by the flickering candlelight that danced on their notes. Between them lay sketches of the crystal, diagrams of the ancient magic Luna had found in the margins of a herbology textbook, and the delicate parchment with the partially finished melody, a tune that trembled with a desire to be whole again. "I think," Luna said softly, tucking a curl behind her ear, "we should follow the song where it wants to go." Ginny leaned over the parchment, tracing the notes with her finger. "But where is that? The stone's given us pieces, images, even feelings, but it's still a puzzle." Neville, ever grounded, offered a thoughtful murmur. "What if we need to give something back to it? It's been showing us all these things, memories, people, unfinished threads. Maybe we need to give it a memory too, something new." Luna tilted her head in quiet delight. A song needs a voice. Maybe it's waiting for one. That became their next step. Not just listening, but participating. For the first time, they brought instruments into the hidden room. Ginny had borrowed a small enchanted harp from the music classroom under the pretense of a late assignment. Neville found an old Hufflepuff house drum tucked away in a storage room behind the greenhouses. Luna, of course, had the broken flute, which, though it no longer made a perfect sound, still carried a presence, as though it remembered its own melody. They entered the room like one might enter a chapel, not from fear, but from reverence. The singing stones sat waiting, faintly glowing in lavender hues. The air shimmered with something unspoken. They began to play, not perfectly. They weren't trained musicians, but there was a beauty in the attempt. Ginny plucked simple notes, Neville tapped a gentle rhythm, and Luna, eyes closed, played the broken flute as if the song were already inside her, aching to come out. The crystal responded not with light this time, but warmth. The room brightened subtly, like sunrise behind sheer curtains. A feeling, soft as comfort, old as memory, settled over them. It was like being hugged by the castle itself. And then came the shift. From the base of the pedestal, a crack opened. A compartment, hidden until now, slowly revealed itself with a sigh of old magic. Inside lay a book, not large, not elaborate, just a small, leather-bound journal with a pressed daisy on its cover, faded by time. Luna picked it up with quiet care. "It belonged to her," she whispered, "the girl from the memory, the one with the flute." They turned the pages together, seated on the stone floor. The handwriting was careful, a little slanted, with ink faded to sepia. The pages weren't just filled with notes, they were filled with feelings. "I named it the Memory Song," one entry read, "because when I play it, I feel like I remember people I've never met, places I've never seen. It feels like the castle is singing back to me." Another page, later and shakier, said, "We finished the full melody today. I thought it would bring light, but something's wrong. It echoed too loudly. Something else heard it too." The last entry chilled them gently. "We're going to hide the crystal, lock it in time. It's not the song that's dangerous, it's the echo. The echo remembers more than we intended." Ginny closed the book softly. "They stopped the song on purpose, to protect the castle." Neville nodded, eyes clouded. "But it's been waking up again." Luna stared at the crystal. "Maybe it's because we listened without fear. Maybe the song isn't cursed. Maybe it's just lonely." It was a choice now. They could stop, close the journal, walk away, and leave the melody unfinished, the past quiet and undisturbed. Or they could finish it, risk waking whatever echo remained in those final notes, but perhaps also set something right. "We can't leave it incomplete," Luna said gently. "Not after all we've seen. It's not just a song, it's a memory waiting to be healed." Ginny smiled faintly. "Then let's finish it, together." Neville, after a quiet breath, added, "We'll be careful, we'll be kind. Hogwarts has trusted us this far." And so they chose. That night, they began composing the missing piece of the song, not with grand chords or flashy magic, but with their memories. They thought of their happiest days in the castle, the smell of pumpkin juice on cold mornings, the rustle of wind in the Quidditch stands, the quiet kindness of shared books in the common room. They wove those memories into notes, simple, honest, gentle, and with each new phrase added, the crystal glowed a little warmer, as if it too was remembering the light. Somewhere far above them, an enchanted window in the astronomy tower opened on its own, letting in moonlight that curled through the corridors like a sleepy sigh. The castle was listening, and for the first time in decades, the song that once faded in fear began to find its ending, not in darkness, but in harmony. The next evening drifted in with a velvet hush, the skies outside Hogwarts glowing with lavender clouds, as if the castle itself were holding its breath. Down in the secret chamber, Luna, Neville, and Ginny sat before the glowing crystal, their hearts carrying the weight of quiet hope. The partially finished melody they had begun now hovered in the air like a dream half remembered, waiting for its final lines. Ginny adjusted the harp on her lap, its golden strings humming softly with anticipation. Neville held the small Hufflepuff drum against his knees, steady and grounded, and Luna, always somewhere between the stars and the earth, gently placed the broken flute to her lips. But just as they prepared to play, something changed. The crystal pulsed once, then again, and a shimmer of air rippled outward like the surface of a still lake disturbed by an invisible pebble. The room dimmed, candle flames bent and inward, and then, suddenly, time itself seemed to hold still. The air was no longer just air, it was filled with a presence. And then she appeared, not in the way a ghost might, but more like a memory given shape. A soft figure formed from shimmering silver light stood just above the floor. The same girl from the stone's earlier visions, long braids, gentle eyes, robes stitched with faint musical runes. Her presence brought no fear, only a hush, a deep, bone-soothing hush. "You found it," she said, her voice like a note held gently in the back of the mind. The melody. They could barely respond, but Luna, calm and open-hearted, spoke softly. "We heard it. We tried to listen. We wanted to help." The girl smiled, and even her smile felt like a song. "I was only a student," she said, "but I heard the castle hum. I heard the wind sing through the stone. I followed it, note by note, until I created the melody with my friends. It was beautiful, until the last notes." She drifted closer to the crystal. Her form flickered like candlelight on water. When we played the ending, the castle didn't just sing back. It remembered, and in its memory was grief. It remembered every sorrow, every loss buried in its bones. The stone held too much. Ginny asked quietly, "So you stopped it? Hid the melody?" The girl nodded. "Yes, but I didn't want to forget it forever. I hoped someone else, someone kind, would come one day and hear it without fear, not to control it, not to use it, just to listen, just to understand." Neville looked up, his eyes wide with realization. That's why it responded to us. We didn't force it. We didn't try to bend it. We just sat and listened. The girl turned to them with a warmth that radiated through the room. "And that's why you can finish it," she whispered. "But the final note, it must come from within you, not from memory, not from the past, but from now." She stepped back, and the crystal began to glow brighter, not in pulses this time, but in steady rhythm, like a calm heartbeat. "I can only stay for a moment," she said, "but before I go, I will show you one more memory, not of me, but of the castle." And with that, the room melted into light. They were no longer in the stone chamber. They were standing in the great hall, but not as they knew it. The walls were the same, the floating candles the same, yet everything felt older, simpler. Rows of young students sat on benches carved by hand. No house colors, no rivalry, just wonder. At the front, the 4 founders of Hogwarts stood, not yet legends, but simply teachers, with starlight in their eyes. And they sang, together, a song of welcome, of beginnings, of peace. The same melody, the very one. Tears blurred Ginny's eyes as she realized this song wasn't just a creation, it was the castle's heartbeat, its original lullaby, a memory of unity lost in the tides of time and history. Then, just as gently as it came, the vision faded. They were back in the hidden room, the crystal glowing with the softness of moonlight through old glass. The girl's figure was fading too, her light scattering like petals in the wind. "Sing the last note," she said with a final smile, and let Hogwarts remember love, not sorrow. And then she was gone. Luna looked down at her flute. Neville took a slow, steadying breath. Ginny placed her fingers on the harp strings. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Together, they played. The melody rose, soft and sure. The harp echoed the castle's oldest stones. The drum carried the rhythm of footsteps through countless corridors, and the flute, mended now by the castle's own magic, sang like dawn breaking. And when the final note came, it wasn't loud, it wasn't grand. It was a sigh, a release, a whisper of peace. The crystal stilled, the glow remained, but it no longer pulsed, it no longer cried, it was at rest. Around them, nothing spectacular happened. No walls cracked open, no ghosts appeared, no power surged, just silence. And then the most extraordinary thing of all, a feeling, a gentle warmth unfurling across the room, a sense of belonging, of harmony, as if the castle itself had exhaled after holding its breath for centuries. They had healed it, not by undoing the past, but by offering it a present filled with kindness. And in that moment, the story of the singing stone was no longer a mystery. It was a lullaby that had been waiting for someone to remember it, not with fear, but with love. The days that followed passed like the slow turn of parchment in an old book. Hogwarts, ever grand and filled with secrets, seemed to breathe a little easier. The stone that once cried with forgotten sorrow now sat quietly in its chamber, humming only faintly, a low, contented sound, like a lullaby meant only for the castle itself. Luna, Ginny, and Neville returned often, not to experiment or explore, but simply to sit. Sometimes they would bring small instruments, sometimes just tea. They rarely spoke while in the chamber. There was no need. The magic had been fulfilled, and in its place was stillness. A beautiful, comforting stillness. Professor Flitwick noticed something curious. The tone of the great hall had softened, not in volume, but in feeling. The enchanted ceiling glowed warmer at night, the stars more golden than white. Even the staircases, notorious for their mischief, seemed less eager to twist and more willing to guide. A quiet peace had settled. Luna began writing again, her parchment filled not with explanations or theories, but with soft poetry inspired by what she had felt. She didn't try to prove the stone existed. She didn't feel the need. Some stories were meant to be held gently, not shouted. Neville, with a newly kindled confidence, started staying after herbology classes to tend to the castle's quiet corners, small planters near stairwells, forgotten soil beds under frosted windows. He swore the plants had begun growing faster, as though the castle itself was nurturing them with new warmth. And Ginny? She found herself returning to music, not for performance or practice, but for joy. Sometimes she played in the Gryffindor common room, sometimes in the courtyard beneath a leafless tree, always with that final, quiet note in her heart, the one that healed not through volume, but through intention. On the last evening before the holiday break, the three of them returned to the hidden chamber one last time. They brought no instruments, only themselves. They sat by the stone and watched its gentle glow. The room felt like a memory held in cupped hands, safe from the world's noise. Ginny whispered, "Do you think she's still here?" Luna tilted her head and smiled dreamily. "Not here exactly, but I think the melody is." Neville added, "And that's more than enough." They stayed for a while longer, long enough to feel the rhythm of the stone's hush matching their own steady breaths. Then, together, they stood and quietly left. The chamber didn't close behind them. It simply faded, not with resistance, but with peace, like a candle slowly melting into darkness after a long, warm glow. The next morning, as the Hogwarts Express gently chugged through the snowy countryside, the three friends sat together by the window, sipping pumpkin juice and watching the frost gather on the glass. None of them spoke about the stone, not because it wasn't real, but because it had become something else, a whisper in the wind, a warmth in the halls, a memory that sang not for attention, but for healing. And somewhere, deep beneath the foundation stones of the castle, the crystal rested quietly, no longer waiting, no longer aching, just humming, like a soft, endless lullaby for those who listened kindly. And now, dear dreamer, as the candlelight of our story flickers to a close, let your thoughts wander gently through the corridors of Hogwarts, where magic breathes in whispers, and even the quietest stones hold songs of old. The tale of the singing stone may not be in any textbook. You won't find it carved into the library's ancient pillars or listed on the back of chocolate frog cards. But stories like this, the ones that hum instead of shout, that settle in your chest like a soft blanket, those are the ones that stay with you longest. Maybe, somewhere deep inside the castle, the stone still hums tonight. Or maybe the melody now lives in the hearts of those who dared to listen, who believed that magic could be gentle, that peace could echo just as powerfully as spells cast in fire and storm. Perhaps you'll dream of wandering those same corridors, your footsteps echoing on quiet stone, lanterns swaying gently overhead. Maybe you'll find the chamber again. Maybe you'll sit by the crystal's glow and let it sing just for you. But even if you don't, know this: the castle remembers kindness. It holds quiet courage like moonlight in stone, and no matter how far away you feel from magic, it's never truly gone. It's there, in the warmth of a soft blanket, in the hush of night air, in the comfort of a story told gently before sleep. So rest now, breathe slowly. Let your thoughts drift, like snowflakes falling over the black lake. Calm, unhurried, beautiful. You're safe, you're warm, and in some small, magical corner of the world, a stone sings still, just for you, good night.